Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Harvesting Wisdom. The mission of Harvesting Wisdom is to tell the stories of individuals and organizations that embrace sustainability, regenerative agriculture, and land management as a cornerstone of planetary health and prosperity and health for generations to come. Today I have Hubs Peanuts owner, representative Marshall Rabil. And I don't know if I pronounced that. Is that Rabil or Rabil? How do you pronounce that?
It's Rabil, but it is there's some Lebanese roots. So okay. Rabil would be correct in Arabic. Yeah.
All right, perfecto. So I got it kind of right. But you've got a cool story. You're in a generational farm, and you guys have been growing peanuts, which, by the way, are an amazing product in agriculture, something we need to grow more of, I think, worldwide, but for a lot of reasons. We'll go into that in a little bit. But you went to college, some environmental studies stuff, so you're familiar with issues on agriculture and on education. And then you went to Japan, and I love Japan. One of the things I always say is the Japanese do everything we do, they just do it a little better. It's just
certainly more intentional.
Yeah. Well, there's, you go through the cities. Where's the garbage? There's no garbage. You don't see homeless. It's just a society that kind of figured out how we're supposed to live on top of each other, because it's a big population, over 100 million, in a very small little area there, that island. So, but they have they embrace their history and they move forward. There's a lot. What I liked when I went there is I looked at the agriculture, and every single space in any area, if it wasn't a building on it or some use on it, they had a garden patch and they were growing in little neighborhoods where they had greenhouses, and that the whole community's in there growing food, and they kind of take it serious, and which is what we should all do. What did you do? So you got out of school and you were teaching and coaching. Tell us a little about that.
Yeah, I mean, I got out of school and knew I wanted to travel and wanted to see the world, and I needed someone to pay for me to do that. And so education was the perfect outlet for me to begin my, post-grad studies abroad. And so I worked for the Japanese Ministry of Education through the JET program, which is a government organization that places English-speaking people in villages, cities, towns around Japan. And I lived in a small village called Nishi Yoshino Mura, which is west of Yoshino. It's the most famous place in Japan for persimmons. And it's just west of Yoshino where the cherry blossoms and the cherry trees are. And our village was persimmon orchards and plum orchards. And I was the only English-speaking person in that village, and it was beautiful. It was not so unlike my community in Virginia that focuses more on kind of peanuts, cotton, corn, soybeans, and as a small village as well. Obviously it was night and day, but some of the culture of the ag-based industry was the same. So there was some familiarity as far away as I could possibly be from home, which was really neat.
Yeah. Did you learn a little Japanese?
I did, and I studied Japanese in high school, and that was probably why it was the first place I wanted to go back to, was to be able to immerse myself in another culture and be able to speak Japanese a little bit. And so I left after 2 years being able to carry on some pretty good conversations in Japanese, and could read and write a fair amount. Obviously, that was almost 20 years ago, so it continues to wane. But I got to see Hideki Matsuyama this past weekend in Pinehurst, North Carolina, and was able to speak to him in Japanese for a quick couple
Ah,
sentences, which was fun.
that's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So your family has been into peanut. What year? Do you know the year that it actually
Yeah,
started?
I do. Well, our business started in 1954, so this is our 70th anniversary. And my
Wow.
grandmother is actually the founder of our company. My grandmother was a school teacher as well. My grandfather was a purchasing manager for Union Camp, which is a paper mill. Our co- our largest employer in Franklin, Southampton County is now International Paper, which was Union Camp. And
Hmm.
this was kind of a side hustle for them. My great grandfather had a peanut farm, and there was kind of a local recipe that people would use. It's called blister fried cooking, and my grandmother was literally hand picking the largest peanuts she could find out of my great grandfather's farm, and she was skinning the peanuts by hand, and soaking them in hot water, and then frying them in oil, and then giving them away as gifts to her friends. That's kind of like the traditional business and how it evolves. It's like, oh man, those peanuts are fantastic, Dot. What are you doing? We need more of these. And so she and my grandfather kind of got together and got a little packaging, and started selling them to the hardware stores and the pharmacies. At the time, Virginia was on the map as a peanut producing state. Planters Peanuts, Amadeo Obasi, the founder of Planters, moved from the Northeast to Virginia to work with the Birdsong family in the early 1900s,
Hmm.
and they perfected dry roasting peanuts and kind of using the soil, the nice sandy loamy soil here in Virginia, as a ground for growing peanuts. But they would use every one of the peanuts. And what made Dot and HJ's peanuts or Hub's peanuts different is the size of the kernel that we were using. So as we kind of grew, my grandmother would go to the shellers that were working with planters and said, "Hey, I want the peanuts that do not go through the screen." So when they're shelling, they grade them out in different ways. So she wanted just the biggest kernels that would not go through. And at the time, the USDA did not have a grade for these peanuts. And now they're graded out as super extra large Virginia type peanuts. So she is credited as the pioneer of the gourmet specialty peanut industry, which in our region in Virginia, I kind of equate it to, I see that nice glass of wine on your desk. We are in Virginia as Napa Valley is to wine. There are probably 20 specialty Virginia peanut companies that kind of took Dot and HJ's lead. And it's been really cool to see how this industry and business has evolved to be somewhat representative of Southeastern Virginia, Northeastern North Carolina. And, that's kind of how the business started. Um, and so the differentiator was the cook process and the size. And so my grandfather was going to the hardware stores and selling dime bags of Hubs next to nickel bags of Planters, because he was like, you know what? Our peanuts are twice as big, they're twice as good, they should command twice the price. So therefore, like, we kind of created this top shelf peanut
A
with the
niche.
cook process and everything that was a little bit different. So that's kind of how we got our start.
So she was, without knowing it, she was, maybe she did know it. She was using natural selection. She was taking the biggest and best kernels each year, and that's all she was planting. And ultimately, that's what she ended up with, is a crop of really cool specialty product.
Well, so because it's really hard to scale that, and so we have partnered with farmers in Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. This whole region is great, and so we're still only using the top 1% of the crop, but that the rest of the crop is still used 100%. I mean, in peanut, but what we are purchasing comes from a bunch of different farmer partners around the region, and so it's been pretty cool because Virginia peanut growers, North Carolina peanut growers, and South Carolina peanut growers use us or Hubs as their promotional product. So when they want to give product peanuts away, they get us to do them because I think we represent kind of what peanuts can be. And so
So
all
it
those
works for
farmers are
everybody.
super valuable
Yeah.
valuable to
So
us. And
how many
go
acres
ahead.
did you start with? How many acres do you still have the same acreage? and then now you broker a bunch of
Unfortunately,
stuff?
no. No, and we do not. We're buying now from all the different. We're buying from the shellers. It's over, I mean, tens of thousands of acres that I wish that we had, but we do not. It's a lot of different family farms that we're working with.
But you
Um,
still have the
we do
original
have
family
a
farm.
we do have a really cool project now with Elisha Barnes, who is a fourth generation peanut farmer. And what's so cool about Elisha's farm is that he still shocks peanuts the old fashioned way. And so what that means is basically you stick a pole in the ground and then you pitchfork and you put them on the shocks, and they're sun cured and dried on the shocks for 6 weeks, as opposed to being picked off the vines in about 6 days and dried in trailers. So it's the old fashioned way of harvesting, and that's become a very fun project. And that's our kind of our single origin line. And so we partner with a farmer, and we buy everything from that crop. And that's just been so fun because it's preserved history and culture, and it's given our community something to celebrate. And it's really like 4 or 5 acres of peanuts right now that are being done this way all over the country. And um, this particular crop that we had last year was all grown on Izzy's Field, which is the first food bank to farm to food bank project. So it's a community effort where last year all the corn that was grown at Izzy's Field was harvested and given to the food bank. This year we had food bank volunteers come and shock the peanuts with pitchforks. And now the product that we're producing, every can sold equates to 2 meals given back into our community. So it's a beautiful, like, full circle project that, I mean, literally our community is harvesting, and our community is being fed through this particular 4 acres of peanuts from Elisha. And that to me is the coolest few acres of peanut farms around.
Yeah, it's interesting because but that's definitely a higher labor
Oh,
type of setup, right? I mean, but you get what
unsustainable from a labor standpoint.
well, but it's sustainable as long as people appreciate it and will buy the superior product too. But you're right,
Sure.
at least in the U.S. and we'll go into Africa in a minute or two. But the idea of what you're doing, so you guys are kind of producing the peanuts. You're with your process. You still grow any of them on your own farm at all, or you're brokering them all?
Yeah, unfortunately not. But that's why I wanted to kind of got into the Elisha story, because but we don't. They ended up they sold the farm, and we kept doing the manufacturing and packaging and kind of service
Right.
piece of it. Peanut industry is really interesting. There's so many people involved to get to this final product, so it's a very collaborative effort amongst a lot of people to
Yeah.
get to that can of peanuts. Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool to see the world through a commodity, whether that's a grape that grows wine, or it's pulp that you make paper out of, or it's peanuts that have a variety of food applications. But milk is another one. There's and there's entire industries, but generations of people who've kind of perfected processes along the way and machinery along the way. So, with how many tons of peanuts do you guys actually are you able to? Because you're selling them in smaller. As a matter of fact, we ordered some Hubs peanuts, and I'll show it on the podcast a little bit later. But you're selling them in relatively small quantities. They're a little pricier, but like I said, it's worth it. If you're going to have a peanut, you might as well have a quality peanut, right?
That's right.
So
That's right.
what do you process a year? How many jars, or how many pounds, or how
Sure.
many tons?
So we'll cook, 8,000 pounds a day is what we can cook.
Wow.
We're not cooking every day, but that's typically what we do. But that's still, I mean, when you look at the peanut industry, and even the larger manufacturers, I mean, 8,000 pounds a day is so small. Really, it's still a super craft industry, and We've been a kind of a direct consumer brand since our inception, and so like you said, you ordered them. I would have been happy to send. I'll be happy to send you some more, but
Right.
I appreciate that. But yeah, we're mostly a D2C brand, and 8,000 pounds a day yields 6,500 cans or so a day that we'll do. Um, and we're a Christmas gift, honestly, holiday gift for a lot of people. So we start this time of year kind of building inventory for the holiday season, anticipating sales. So it's a little
Yeah.
stressful as you build inventory,
Yeah.
hoping to sell it. But
Well,
that's our game.
it's interesting because that's kind of how all retail. I was reading before that 90% of retail sales for just products in general are between Thanksgiving and Christmas, or some crazy. I don't know if that's the exact number, but it just goes to show you that's when people are buying, and especially, if you're trying to do a food basket or you're trying to give a gift of quality things. And I remember it was probably more so when I was a kid. I grew up on the Northeast in Buffalo, and I remember my parents getting like apples or oranges or specialty nuts in the wintertime, which, hell, first of all, there's no citrus in the Northeast, but the idea of getting it in the winter from Florida or from California and then giving, but it was also those baskets of, or that fruit, the pears, and I can't remember the
Mhm.
name of that manufacturer, but you'd know who it is. But and they were like perfect each time, right? They were big and juicy, and they were delicious. And you almost get more excited over a gift like that than you would over a Chanel purse. At least I would. But
Me, well, that goes back to my days in Japan. I don't know if you remember like going into some of the markets there,
mm,
and like their peaches, their melons. Like that's one of the nicest things you can get. I mean, you might get a cantaloupe and give it to somebody. It's like $60, and it's like,
yeah,
oh my gosh, this cantaloupe. But it's the juiciest, sweetest, like well packaged. Like everything is so
yeah, but it's
nice
worth
about
it,
it.
right? It doesn't. The
But
price
it's
doesn't
worth it.
matter
Yeah,
because it's worth it. Just like their
it's an
whiskey,
experience.
all of the
Yeah,
stuff that
totally.
they have there. But
Yeah.
you had also worked for a stint in the grocery business. I mean, it is when I was growing up, I did every job I could get a job doing to pay my way through. If I wanted clothes at the age of 12, I had to buy my own. If I wanted anything, to go to school, to pay through school. So I worked in restaurants, but I worked in grocery stores, and I remember stocking shelves in the middle of the night and working night shifts and working at the day in the day and the displaying. And it's not a coincidence, right? It's something that's done very purposeful. When you talk about Japan, it's when you go through a market in Japan, it's a beautiful sight to behold, right? The people don't have things just thrown in a basket. Things are lined well and everything. How long did you work in that? So you did a little bit in Japan, maybe, but more when you got
No,
back here.
yeah, no, it was more. It was a more of a transition from education that I was doing. I was a teacher and a coach, and then I knew that I wanted to get back into. I always wanted to come back to my roots and get into our family business. And I thought I was working on a startup business as well. And so I was working at Whole Foods because I knew that first of all, it was a target market for us at the time to sell Hubs peanuts. So I was able to like go in, work at Whole Foods, but while I was working at Whole Foods, I could learn a lot of the grocery, learn a little bit more about merchandising, sampling, in-store displays, but also how to get our product into Whole Foods. And while I was there, I did into the Whole Foods South region. I was in Nashville, and so that really was, and just to see a larger company, this is prior to the Amazon acquisition. So just to see the company culture, like I was a real big fan of John Mackey's book, Conscious Capitalism. And so I read that prior to wanting to go into Whole Foods because I aligned well with his philosophies. And so I knew that I wasn't ready to come back to Virginia and I was in Nashville was great, and that's where my now wife and I were there and having a ball. But Whole Foods and it really was just an education for me in kind of the grocery industry, other company cultures, things that I could learn to try to bring back here. And some of that I've really have did bring back into our company, and have tried to implement some of the things that I learned culturally at Whole Foods, and but also um, the first few years back, my main job was trying to expand some of our wholesale presence because I began to understand grocery business. So that's kind of what I focused on initially, was getting into markets like natural grocers or Zupans, Central Market, Fresh Market, Wegmans, things like that. So learning those industries, and those are still partners of ours. And so, yeah, Whole Foods was great, but it was my intent there was not to get a paycheck, but really just to learn another company and culture that I was inspired by, honestly, and try to learn from them. And so
Yeah.
it was good.
It's crazy to be good at something. You have to work at it, and you have to get educated, and you have to have that curiosity. The average person, might not want to move back to the hometown and then take a job at a grocery store to learn things. But you were focused. You knew exactly what you were trying to do. Now, what's the future for Hub's Peanuts? Now, if you tell me that there's peanut brittle on the horizon, then I'll definitely be sitting up because that's like
Nice. Well,
one of
we
my
have
favorite foods.
well, good. I've got some great peanut brittle, and we have. So we outgrew the space that my grandparents. My mother's office was actually her childhood bedroom, right? And so it's really cool. Like our corporate office is in a residential neighborhood in this little village called Sedley. And as we grew, we added the warehouse and another warehouse and the kitchen, another warehouse, and we outgrew our property and we needed additional space. And in 2019, we purchased an old farm fresh grocery store that had closed in our community. And it was kind of an ideal space for us because we wanted to get into chocolate manufacturing. Chocolate covered peanuts was a strong
Oh,
grower item for us.
I love that
And
too.
the chocolate producer sold their company in Virginia for a real estate deal. And so there was an opening in the Virginia market to run chocolate covered peanuts. We also needed more warehousing and shipping space. And we'd always kind of talked about having like a retail market where people could stop by, get some ham biscuits and a sandwich while they come in and shop and get peanuts. And so we bought this old grocery store, and that was in 2019, and we started renovating it in 2020. Um, we opened in September of 2020, and now we have a market where we've taken the deli and the bakery, and that's our kitchen. We partnered with a local person who wants to do cheesecakes. He's using our bakery. The seafood department has turned into our candy kitchen, where we're making the caramel for our heavenly hubs, where we're doing some product
Wow.
development. The meat department and the beer cooler we transformed into the chocolate and roving line. The wine department is our new packaging line, and the center aisles and freezer is where we do all of our shipping and warehousing. And so that has been a transformation over the last couple of years, and that was a big project. That was a big expansion for our family, and now we had like when I moved back to Franklin, we were kind of looking at our vision, our 2025 vision, so to speak, and we've kind of achieved those goals. We've hit those numbers, and so now it's exciting because we're at the next phase of, all right, so what's next? And like, I really love collaborative projects, and so I'm working on a couple of different smaller batch projects. This project with Elisha was something new that came out that I love. We're working on a couple of other products. We don't like to release a lot of new products. I mean, we like to sell salted peanuts and chocolate covered peanuts. We'll do what we do well. Maybe create a little pop here and there that'll work. That'll keep people interested, but really just continuing to integrate our community with this business, because this new market, the Hub's Vine, has really become like an unofficial welcome center to Franklin. I mean, people come here. We have lunches here. We have dinners, fundraisers. I have an artist series once a month with singer-songwriter sessions where musicians will come and play music. And so we've got I'm just continuing to try to like integrate some of my interests, whether it's in sports, music, or food, into our brand. And because of we're a peanut product that works well as an ingredient, as with chefs, we've got partnerships with the PGA Tour. We were just at Pinehurst in the concessions, so wanting to continue to get into front of that demographic. And then the music and the artist, if we're able to get artists here and have nice dinners and bring the artists, then they get to see our brand and hospitality. So really just kind of growing Hub's brand as a hospitality company that works in food, music, sports, entertainment, and that's kind of what I've been working on now, and it's slowly starting to materialize. Some of these ideas that I've had and been working on, like a crop, is starting to sprout a little bit, and it's been fun to see. So I'm excited for the future. I think we've got some more infrastructure now to where we can grow. I mean, we've got a website project is probably our next big deal. And that's always a pain, but that's a next step is updating some technology and some tech systems. And so once we do that, I think we're ready for our next growth spurt. We'll see, but I mean, that's kind of the idea. Yeah.
That's great. So you just brought up a bunch of things. So you took a store that was closing, which would be a community
Yeah.
eyesight, right? And I see it
Totally.
in the agriculture belt all over the United States, where for one reason or another, we've gone to really big commercial industrialized agriculture, which has reduced the amount of labor, which means that people lost their jobs in these smaller towns. And then when the jobs are gone, you lose community, right? And that's been a big thing. Now, there's pluses and minuses with that. There's, you're not forced to work on the farm per se. You're not working in the sun, slaving all day if you don't want to. And it frees people up to do other things. But at the same time, you lose a lot of the tradition that really is part of the United States and how the United States was built and how small communities. But to repurpose something and then to repurpose it around a single commodity brand, to me that's like superstar. That's like as good a thing as you can do, right? But and what's interesting also is the idea of using chocolates. Matter of fact, tomorrow I have a guest who's doing wine-infused chocolates from Napa, and I do a lot of travel. So I was in Brussels, where they were the big chocolatiers of Europe early on, and I've been down to Mexico and to Nicaragua, and I've seen coffee plantations and watching a single commodity like that, and how it's influencing. So, and there's chocolate, and then there's chocolate. There's peanuts, and then there's peanuts, right? So,
Sure.
if you're using that really high quality chocolate, one of my favorites was a chocolate in Italy, in Piedmont, that is uses hazelnut instead of cream in the chocolate, which I like cream, don't get me wrong, but that chocolate to me was as good as any I've ever had. So it's interesting to see that you're branching out and you're doing like a peanut cluster or a chocolate cluster, and then peanut brittle is kind of an old product, right? And I grew up in Buffalo. There was a candy factory, a candy shop owned by a very old, at the time they were very old, German family, and they used to make their own peanut brittle, and and I've seen it where, you almost burn your hands stretching that out to make a nice thin peanut brittle. That's an art form unto itself. But let's go into the crop itself. So you're working with different guys, and some of them are organic, some of them are not, some of them are. But generally, the farmers you're dealing with do look at as many natural products as they can. And are they rotating their crops, their peanuts, with other crops
Yes.
then?
Well, peanuts, are just a wonderful cover crop as a
Hmm.
rotational crop because they put nitrogen, they're nitrogen fixing, so they put nitrogen back into the soil. So they're
Right.
replenishing some nutrients, and that's what a lot of folks around here, you'll plant peanuts and then plant cotton behind them. so you don't have to use as much fertilizer.
Sure.
And I think that is key to the rotation here. We're pretty in this region, in the VC, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. It's those four crops. It's peanuts, corn, cotton, soybeans, maybe some tobacco still, and smaller acreage. But yeah, so peanuts are just a good crop to plant ahead of other rotational crops in this region for sure.
Sure. And how
And the water.
often on one particular plot, how often can you plant a peanut crop? Every
So we
three
just
years?
finished the plant. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So the planting season, I mean, you get one season a year. We just planted in May. We harvest in September, October, and then that will usually be rotated every 3 to 4 years exactly.
So it's perfect with cotton. That'll grow for a few years.
It
So
is a perfect cotton rotation. Yeah.
yeah, and we with my soil company, we also do hemp and hemp seed.
Hmm.
So I think hemp will also be part of that same rotation. And hemp, it's a little more tenacious root structure. It goes 2.5 meters, so it's breaking up hard pan and it's allowing you to take fertility from the top to the bottom as it's growing. But it's uses a little less water, and it's really a great rotation crop for cotton. But the legume is for sure paramount to any particular field. That's what regenerative agriculture is all about. It's about having the correct crop rotations, and ideally a little less tillage maybe, and good companion planting and that kind of thing. We had
Yeah.
uh,
I mean,
we had talked a little about the process as it's growing, but how about your manufacturing process? Now, I've had peanuts that are good and then peanuts that are not so good. You've been to Africa, and I don't know if you've personally been there or not. I know you guys work in
mhm.
Malawi a little bit. Um, the peanuts in Malawi, unfortunately, are just horrible. They just boil them. To me, they're horrible. I'm not used to them. So they taste kind of soggy and soft. And that texture I'm not used to. I'm used to an American peanut. Come on, it's crunchy and it's got a little salt to it and
Yeah,
it's tasty. And
there's a big debate in the South. I mean, boiled peanuts are huge in gas stations across the Southeast,
yeah,
and that's more similar to what you're talking about. It's a totally different snack and different flavor profile. But yeah, I mean that's another thing about peanuts is the fact that they're grown on 6 to 7 continents and they're used in cuisine all over the world, um, and they're drought resistant. They don't require they require a fraction of the water that other nuts do with more protein. So that's one of the reasons they're just a great food source. In Africa, that was actually I was in Uganda and I was kind of looking at polyculture agriculture, and that's some what you were mentioning, chocolate and coffee, and these cacao and coffee plantations. I mean, we can't I don't think scale polyculture agriculture the way they do on the coffee plantations, and the smaller co-ops and the chocolate cacao plantations, but the rotation is critical. But when it was interesting, I was studying this coffee plantation, and JJ, who was growing coffee in Uganda, also was growing peanuts. And so this was in 2008, and on my desk I still have a can or a bottle of his little teeny little peanuts because I had this single origin concept. I was like, I'm gonna buy all of JJ's peanuts, cook them here. We'll do this like African, U.S. like fusion thing. But then Elisha came about, and it was
that's a
just
lot of work.
made way more sense.
Yeah,
But like the idea for that was there. But the work we do in Malawi is really just supporting an organization called Project Peanut Butter, because Dr. Mark Maneri is the founder of Project Peanut Butter, and he kind of discovered that RUTFs, ready to use therapeutic foods, was critical in bringing severely malnourished children back to life, and it's really a peanut based product. And the project in Malawi, which is so cool. Like what I was doing after Japan was international development work and international studies, taking college kids around, like kind of getting involved in very high level development projects all over the world. But what's so great about Project Peanut Butter is you need buy-in, right, from everybody
Oh yeah,
that the project is
and
about.
the people
And
who eat it
so
too.
with Project Peanut Butter, the peanuts are grown by Malawian farmers. The factory workers are Malawian. The kids that are being fed the RUTFs are Malawian children. So it's like it's a full circle development project that is working and is helping bring kids out of malnourishment. But it's grown. I mean, it's Malawian farmers, Malawian workers, Malawian children. So that's what's been so cool about that project, and really to just bring awareness about the importance of peanuts as a food source. I mean, I
Sure.
argue that it's the world's most important superfood because of many of the reasons I just mentioned, from an environmental standpoint,
Right.
ease of growing, and supply. So
There's a
yeah.
handful of those very important superfoods. That's why we call them superfoods, though, right? Because they're so impactful both for nutrition and our diets, but also for the land and for soil health. But have you been able to get over to Malawi yourself yet?
I have not been I've been in Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Kenya,
All right.
Malawi, and going to that project is high on my list. I moved back here, got a family. I just need a couple weeks to get over there.
Yeah.
But I spent most of my 20s doing that, and I just need to go back.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things especially Africa, once you're there, you realize that's where we're all from. That's where music's from.
Yeah,
That's where everything is from, right? And
totally.
it's natural. They haven't, because they haven't had the resources and they haven't polluted their own ground yet. For the most part, we're dealing with natural soils, and you still have big animals and the whole bit. But we are going to be bringing people with us this next June. I usually go in May, but I'm pushing it back a little. So we're in Lakuni. We're in three different cities: Karanga, Lakuni, and then more central up in the hills on different projects we're working on. But one of the things that we did last year was we introduced the concept of the Three Sisters, which is a Native American growing corn, right, with a legume and with a ground cover. And so they do grow peanuts over there, but it's not something. Not everyone is growing them, first of all. But the idea is we grew at this particular last season was really a tough season. The last two they've had drought, and it's all rain-fed agriculture. So one property we worked on was about 3 acres, and they were growing corn. Couldn't talk them out of that, so they were growing a legume. I think it was a pea or a bean. I can't remember what variety we found that would climb up the corn stalk. And then we were growing pumpkins as a ground cover, but also hibiscus and a bunch of different trees that were. And at the end of the season, they had 3 tons of corn, 2 tons of pumpkin. The legume didn't make it through the whole season, wherever we put it in, because of just the hot, dry season. However, they grew a full harvest and were able to make good money for that family, whereas all the properties around them, small plots, 3, 5, 10, 20-acre plots, as far as you could see, they grew corn using a pesticide, not a pesticide, but probably your urea, nitrogen, which works, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't work when it doesn't rain. So they grew the corn up about an ankle to knee high, and then all the crops failed. And over there, if your crop fails, it means you just don't eat. And they took whatever money they had to buy the seed. They took months to, work on the furrowing, the rows, and the whole bit. And then at the end of the day, they had nothing to show for it. But this one plot sitting in the middle worked. So it gets the awareness of everyone involved. But that's part of what we're talking about to people over there is, if you're going to raise animals, chickens, rabbits, guinea pigs, whatever, cattle, use the waste product is part of your composting. They have a lot of stuff growing over there, right, in the bush, and so
Yeah.
getting green and brown waste and being able to do a compost that's can be primarily using vegetation that's already there, and crop silage, the whole bit, anything, and then putting in a little of that animal waste to create a superior compost. That's what's apparently working, but then just using mulching to cover, because there's a decent amount of clay in the soil, so it dries in the sun. And because they don't have a lot of irrigation, it sits fallow for the better part of 7 months out of the year and bakes in the sun. And so this process is something that we're working on. So bottom line is you shouldn't have mentioned Malawi and you shouldn't have mentioned peanuts because now there's no way I'm not going to figure out a way to get you over there and to help with the projects that we're working on. Because
I'd love to. Yeah.
the impact is amazing. I mean, that's that for such a small amount that we can contribute. The impact is so much more than you'd see in things that we do in the States. So that's a big part of what we've got going on over there. But the peanuts. So let's talk about this process. You take them and you still boil them a little. That gets them cooked or the shell softened or whatever. What's the point of boiling them?
So we buy them from the shellers. So the shell's been taken off of them. They've been blanched, which means the skins have been removed if they're not our red skins.
Okay.
And then we soak them in hot water. It's kind of like you would water blanch vegetables before you would freeze them for the winter. So
Okay.
you water blanch them and then cook. So that was kind of the technique. That's the old country way of preserving your summer vegetables.
Sure.
And then so they're hot water blanched, and then they're transferred and they're fried in oil. But it doesn't retain any oil. That water blanching kind of creates a membrane that seals all of the nutrients, everything in there, and then the oil is just a transfer of heat, really, that they're used to make them super crunchy and crispy, and so that's our cook process.
What's the oil? Is it a peanut oil or is it a different oil?
One would think my grandmother started using a coconut oil back in the day before. And coconut oil is going in and out of fashion. It's
coconut oil is very good. It's a great product. It's good for your body. So, some people you see studies that say it isn't, but that's not true. But you don't have
all oils seem to.
But do you have coconut growing in Virginia? That's the issue.
No. That's the
you're
issue,
doing Malawi.
Right?
You're doing Malawi.
That's right. So if we ever needed to go away from our original recipe, we would use a peanut oil, but we've just always used coconut oil, and it works, and people love it. And
I bet the flavor's amazing. Yeah, I can't wait to get my.
There's nothing better than a hot. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can't wait to get a handful of them. Now, do you salt them at all?
We put salt. That's pretty much. It's peanuts, water, salt, oil. That's all it is.
When does it get salted?
So if you just got a regular. So after they come out of the fryer, they kind of go through a little drying belt through the fans, and then immediately get salted, and then they're canned.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's the way they should be eaten.
Yeah.
I don't know about this whole boiled, soft stuff, but I know people eat it. But so now you're not producing a peanut butter per se at this point in the game.
We're not producing a peanut butter. The Virginia type peanut is not it doesn't have the same oil density that the Georgia runner does, which is what's used for a lot of butters. We do have a partner, Big Spoon Roasters out of Durham. They make really delicious nut butters, and we're the crunch to their crunchy peanuts. So we do partner with a small company that does a peanut butter, but we're the crunch, and that's a really cool, great company, and right down the road from us in Durham.
So they'll take their peanuts, they'll cream them, and then they put your nut in kind of partial to get
as a whole. Mm-hmm.
Which is another thing. I don't like the creamy peanut butter as much as that crunchy stuff because I like the nut. But so that's interesting that now Georgia is had some issues with drought. I know that like last year the peaches, they were all worried about Georgia peaches and stuff. Of course, peanuts are still a good crop to grow in a drought situation, but still, drought is drought. What are you guys seeing in Virginia? Are you seeing, because I
Yeah, it
see
was
it
wet.
everywhere
It
on the
was
planet.
wet. Well, we had a wet spring, so some farmers were a little bit late getting peanuts in the ground or everything in the ground, really. But right now, we're due for some rain. I mean, we're borderline. We're drought right now at the moment, and so in July, can be pretty dry. So we'll see. I mean, it's agriculture, so weather dependent for sure, and not everybody can irrigate, and so that is one of the beauties of peanuts. And the other thing that can be challenging for us is harvest season is also peak hurricane season. So there have been times where the whole crop has been dug and is in the field, and then it's a hurricane. You can't get them out. You can't get them out off the vines. So agriculture can be a stressful industry for sure.
Yeah,
But peanuts, for the most part, because of their water usage and being drought resistant, are pretty good for us. I mean, obviously, as the climate continues to change, we'll see how this evolves. It's something that we're all concerned about and think about, and that's part of the importance of protecting the soil and the land and the planet and all of these
sure.
things that we must do.
Yeah, well,
But
I
yeah,
think I don't, and there's people, I guess it's somehow it becomes political. It's not political because it's jobs are jobs, right? And you just have to make changes. The one thing about farming is it's always adaptable, and farmers always have to adapt. But you do need a little bit of in my mind, and we've always had government a partnership because I talk to farmers all the time. I talked to one farmer and he said, if you're a farmer and you didn't get occasional government help, that 1 year out of every five would just put you out of business. And
right.
it's part of it. To me, it's the biggest part of national security is farming. But it's not just that. It's growing plants like peanuts, like hemp, like we're working with a tire company and playing around with guayuli. I mean, there's different crops that you can grow in different environments, and there's things you can do with the soil that can just get you over that hump, right? And that's part of the problem. You get that late rain, and it destroys your crop, or the early rain, or no rain at all, and you have to have
Hmm.
something that helps you get over that hump to get through that season. Because a failed season is a disaster all around for the people who have to eat, the people who have to grow, and a government that may or may not recognize or help people as they do it. We've had moments in history where I think it was in the 70s or early 80s where we lost like 1 million farmers around the country. And it changes the complexion of the country. And to me, agriculture is the backbone. Agriculture and mining are the backbones of any economy on the planet. Is
Sure.
definitely here, and so that's my pitch all the time. Is like I get
Sure. Yeah.
irritated if people don't see it that way. But anyway, so you've got with Hubs now. So you've got the brothers and sisters in the business too, or are you the one taking it
No,
over?
our family's interesting. My grandparents had 4 kids. They most of those 4 kids at some point or another, whether it was in high school or my mom currently as our CEO, worked in the business. Now my mom is at retirement age. She's slowly taking more trips to the beach and getting involved in the garden
Good for
club
her.
more and things of that nature. Uh, and then those 4 only had 3, and so it's me and my sister. She's not in the business, and I have a cousin who's not in the business. So I'm the only person in our, of my grandparents' descendants that are working in the business. Now we're all owners. We all have, we have quarterly board meetings, and everybody is involved and has a lot of pride in this and trying to continue this legacy. But I'm happy to be and privileged and honored to be able to work in this industry and be in this community. But yeah, so I've got a couple kids. My cousin has a few kids, so we'll see. I definitely think about, after these next couple of long-term goals, 10 years, 15 years, what our succession plan looks like. So I do think about that right now, and whether or not my kids want to do it or not, we'll see. But I mean, I have to plan for both scenarios, I think. So but it is, yeah, it's fun to be in the third generation business that I think is transitioning well. And that's the challenge. It's not just like family, right? Like our team has been made up of community members that have been with us for their entire careers. So we have a lot of people that have been with us for 30, 40, 50 years, and they're at retirement age now. So we're transitioning a lot of people. And that's what I've been working on a lot the last 6, 7 years, is helping that transition with other roles in our company. So
Yeah, yeah.
hopefully, I think we've got a great team around us. I'm super excited about who we're working with. But it's been bittersweet to see a lot of these original people that I grew up with as a young child retiring now, and now having to kind of establish a new team. But I couldn't be more excited about who we're working with, and the group that I'm surrounded by every day. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see how it all goes. But
Well,
I'm excited and encouraged.
I think the background you have with education and mentoring people is critical because we're in a different age. It's just the reality. We're in a digital world, a digital age, and now we're in another generation beyond that agriculture generation. We're one more generation past. So a lot of things are a lot of the good farming values that that's where I believe conservative thought came from. And I'm not talking about today's politics at all, but the
Sure.
idea of not letting anything go to waste, to me, that's
Right.
pure conservative thought, right? And these are great values and lessons for your kids. Both my kids are now ahead of yours. Mine are both graduated from college, and my daughter's done with med school, and she's a surgeon, and my son is an engineer, and he's just finished his master's degree and stuff. So they turned out okay,
Congrats.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
I look back and I say, okay, what did I do wrong? Because I'm a business guy, so I'm always looking, for input versus output. And I think I probably could have had them work more in one of the family businesses or worked a little bit more. I mean, they always worked hard, don't get me wrong. And my daughter works 17-hour shifts right now, so hard work is not something. But I think doing some of those things that, as a kid I had to do, and I think those are valuable. And what I did was I supported sports, which I think is a surrogate a little bit for learning about the real world. And sports are okay, but in my mind, I put too much emphasis, I think, on sports rather than, okay, you can do your sport, but that's kind of like ice cream at the end of the night if you eat your vegetables, and
Sure.
that's the
Sure.
way I look back at that and what we did. But I love the idea of connecting with you on Africa because I think you guys could have a major impact on what we do. Someday, let's see, my niece who's getting married went to UVA. So the last time I
Okay.
was in UVA has been a while. She graduated. She's a doctor too, but she graduated probably a good 10 years ago, 8 years ago. That was my last trip over there. But that's talk about tradition. Wasn't
No. Yeah.
Montecito, wasn't that over in that neck of the woods with
Monticello, Thomas
Monticello?
Jefferson's home,
Thomas Jefferson. Yeah,
and he,
yeah.
I mean,
He was a
an
farmer.
agrarian,
Yeah,
a
he was
farmer.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And that's where our
he
roots
was
are.
every. I mean,
So
what a yeah.
Renaissance guy right
Well,
there, right?
yeah. I mean, I would love to continue the conversation. I think I could learn a lot from you. It sounds like you've got a lot of wisdom that I could harvest,
Oh,
and
I don't know
so
about that, but I do appreciate you being on this podcast, and in a future date, maybe Elisha jumps in, or maybe we're doing a podcast in Malawi together, looking at some other ways of taking what you guys are doing and working in other spots. I'd love to do that. Before I sign off, how do people get a hold of your peanuts? And wait a second, how you just mentioned what do you call it? Your product, Heavenly Chocolates or something. What did you?
Oh, Heavenly Hubs.
Heavenly
Hubs. Yeah.
What a great name.
Yeah.
So that's the chocolate. Is there a peanut brittle too in there, or is it just chocolate?
Just shoot me your address in this email, and I'll make sure you get some peanut brittle. I can't ship you any chocolate right now; it'll just melt, and we just do seasonal chocolate, November through March.
Okay.
Our Heavenly Hubs is one of those products, but I appreciate you asking that. It's hubspeanuts.com, HUBS peanuts with an S.com, or we're on Instagram at Hubs Peanuts, and so we'd love for you all to check us out, and I'll send you some brittle. But yeah, just I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you, and I think there's a lot. I would love to continue the conversation after the show at some point. So thank you for the time and opportunity, Mike. It's been really nice.
All right. Well, thank you, and we'll stay in touch for sure. We'll hook back in, and thanks for everyone listening in today. I'm sure this was one of the better podcasts because I always like talking to people who are involved in a commodity and have a passion and different angles for how to repurpose things in their community. And you got it all. You got the right program going. It'll end up with good results, I'm sure.
I hope so. I appreciate that. We're trying, man.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Click subscribe and like for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for show notes and additional resources. Visit our guests' webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey. And until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.